Tonight, we dedicate our entire program to the tragic story that has dominated all headlines today, a mass shooting at a Colorado movie theater at midnight last night. It has left 12 dead and 59 wounded. Let's go live now to Colorado with Brandy Hitt.
For moviegoers, this exciting night here turned into a real-life horror story. The gunman opened fire, killing 12 people and injuring 59 others. Now the victims' families and police want to know why. The screams and terror inside the midnight premiere of the latest Batman film weren't a reaction to the action happening on screen, but from the hail of bullets fired by a rampaging gunman.
And then you just kept hearing it, bam, 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 bam.
Eyewitnesses say the gunman first tossed what appeared to be a smoke grenade, then started firing at the crowd.
All I could think was, if I stand up, he's gonna shoot, because that's what he was doing, and I was just trying to think how I was gonna get my kids out of there.
Some moviegoers were confused and thought that the gunfire was coming from the action-packed movie.
I see a guy right next to me, a gentleman like sitting right next to me, getting shot, and then that's when I realized that this is not like part of the movie. There's a gunman and he's shooting everyone.
Eyewitness Jennifer Seeger said the gunman was dressed like a SWAT team member, wearing a gas mask and a protective bulletproof vest.
He ended up shooting people behind me, and the bullet casings were just on my forehead. They were burning. I just smelled gunshots.
The suspect, 24-year-old James Holmes, was arrested as he left the theater.
He was apprehended with 3 weapons in the car.
According to one police official, Holmes told investigators he was the Joker, a supervillain character in the Batman movies.
Clearly looks like a deranged individual. He had his hair painted red.
Holmes told police his apartment was booby-trapped. SWAT teams found flammable and explosive materials inside his home and evacuated the 5 surrounding buildings. We're also learning more about the alleged gunman. Holmes has a degree in neuroscience, and ABC News confirms he did purchase several guns recently from several stores, and he did it legally. Reporting live in Aurora, Colorado, Brandy Hitt, ABC News. Now back to you.
All right, Brandy, thank you very much. Now, it should be noted today that both President Obama and Mitt Romney canceled campaign events, and instead they decided today was not a day for political campaigning. And the president, he spoke directly about the Colorado shooting. In fact, he called for a moment of silence.
This morning, we woke up to news of a tragedy that reminds us of all the ways that we are united as one American family. The federal government stands ready to do whatever is necessary to bring whoever's responsible for this heinous crime to justice. And if there's anything to take away from this tragedy, it's the reminder that life is very fragile. Our time here is limited and it is precious. And what matters at the end of the day is not the small things. It's not the trivial things, which so often consume us and our daily lives. Ultimately, it's how we choose to treat one another and how we love one another. Michelle and I will be fortunate enough to hug our girls a little tighter tonight, and I'm sure you will do the same with your children. But for those parents who may not be so lucky, we have to embrace them and let them know we will be there for them as a nation. There are going to be other days for politics. This, I think, is a day for prayer and reflection. So what I'd ask everybody to do, I'd like us to pause in a moment of silence for the victims of this terrible tragedy, for the people who knew them and loved them, for those who are still struggling to recover, and for all the victims of less publicized acts of violence that plague our communities every single day. So if everybody can just take a moment.
And we're going to get to a lot of different questions that arise out of yet another senseless shooting and yet another senseless tragedy. But I want to bring in our panel for this conversation. We're joined by Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, Andy Pelosi, executive director of States United to Prevent Gun Violence, and our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. And also a big part of this program will be joined by Congresswoman. We'll also be joined by the Second Amendment guest as well. But another key component to this for the next 60 minutes is you. And we want you to be part of our conversation tonight. And you know what, I really even changed the question about it before an hour to show. We're going to get into the gun control debate, but more than that, is it time for a national conversation about gun control, about guns in America? What do we believe? If we believe that there is a commonality of senseless tragedy here, is it time for a real national dialogue about this? And before people go into two polar corners on this, could there be more middle ground than many of us imagine here? Because I think there's some facts, once again in this case, that just say this just doesn't make sense. All right, I want to bring in our panel on this, and we'll get into policy in a little bit. But Dom, I'll start with you, and that is, this morning I turned on the news, and you know, I got my kids there in the kitchen, get ready for before they go out the door. And one of them said something that stuck with me. They go, "Oh, Daddy, another shooting." And this time it wasn't at a school. This time it wasn't on, you know, in Scandinavia. But these kids are getting inured to this. That it's not just our imagination. It's happening over and over again. And later on in the program, we're going to show you just in the last year just how many shootings there have been. It's, you know, same story, different place. It's getting to be way too much of just a common narrative.
It's heartbreaking. There's no way that you could wake up this morning and not have this greatly impact you. People doing nothing wrong, entertaining themselves by attending a movie. They're not bothering anyone. And some guy, for whatever reason, whatever nut job.
The randomness of it, to me, it wasn't,
you know, and you're a joker, you failed out of a PhD program out in Denver, and, you know, it's only 17 miles from Columbine, but, you know, the other shooting. But, you know, many of these people didn't even see it coming. Their backs,
of course,
they're watching the movie. And I think that we as the American people are almost in shock over this one, because the number 71 people, additional people shot and wounded, one including a 3-month-old baby, apparently shot in the back.
And you know, Andrew, one of the things is all these shootings are senseless, but if there was a kid that was bullied at school, again, you know, again, there's no rationale to, but you could, yeah, you don't understand the mind, but okay. But you're sitting in a movie theater, a random movie theater. There's a sense of helplessness that you hear from people today, that they just throw up their arms and say, forget about trying to make sense of it anymore. You just can't.
It's tragic, and I think to myself, from the cell phone video, the people screaming and there's reactions, and I think back to Virginia Tech, or I think back to any of the other incidents that we've covered on this program so many times, to see the people and their reaction to it, and that terror, and that sticks with you. The one thing that should not be to anybody is surprising, because we have done nothing to try to roll back the prevalence of guns, either in terms of the physical guns.
We'll get into that policy stuff in a sec.
But this should not surprise anybody. I'm surprised, honestly, that doesn't happen more.
Well, Andy, your take today?
Well, I mean, first of all, we want to extend, you know, our sympathies to the families and the friends of those that were killed as well as injured, because it's horrific what happened today. I mean, it's a massacre what happened today. And I think that I'd like to say that this is finally the time when that national dialogue is going to begin. It should have started years ago. Maybe this is the time. I don't know. I fear, though, that a lot of Americans will remain apathetic about this. Oh, another shooting. Oh, this is what happens in America.